Today's Manna. 가스펠라이프 철치 데니얼 킴 목사가 보내드리는 시간입니다.
Hello to the friends and family of KCBS. My name is Daniel from Gospelife Church and welcome to today's Manna. You know, I believe that there's a version of Christianity that looks right on the outside, but it's completely empty on the inside. It has a language, it has a behavior, it has a rhythm, it knows when to stand, when to sing, what to say, and how to pray. But at its core, it's not driven by love for God. It's driven by the need to be seen. And if you're honest, this is easier than real faith. Because real faith costs you something. But appearances actually just require consistency. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus confronts these directly. He says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. He doesn't say, don't pray. He doesn't say, don't give. He doesn't say, don't fast. He says, check why you're doing it. Because it is possible to do all the right things for all the wrong reasons. Jesus goes on saying, when you give, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. He says, when you pray, go into your room and shut the door. He says, when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites. Over and over again, he's exposing something deeper because God is not impressed with performance. He is after the heart. And here's the danger. You can build an entire life where everyone thinks you're close to God while you slowly drift farther away from Him. You can serve in ministry, you can lead a group, you can show up every week, you can even preach or teach, and still be more concerned with how you appear than you actually are before God. Because somewhere along the way, your identity subtly shifts. You stop being someone who follows Jesus and you become someone who manages the image of following Jesus. And the scary part is that people will affirm you. They'll say, you're so strong in your faith. You're such a great leader. You're so consistent. And those words, if you're not careful, will start to replace the voice of God in your life. Now your motivation is not saying, God, I want you. It becomes, I need to maintain this version of myself. And suddenly your spiritual life is no longer about intimacy. It's about impression. But here's what Jesus is exposing in Matthew 6. The real reward of faith is not the recognition of people. It's the presence of God. 3 times in that chapter, he says, your Father who sees in secret will reward you. I want you to notice that God sees what no one else sees. He sees the quiet prayers. He sees the hidden struggles. He sees the motives behind your obedience. He sees the thoughts you never say out loud, and he is not fooled by appearances. Which means that you can fool people, but you cannot fool God. And that's not meant to scare you, it's actually meant to free you. Because if God sees you fully and invites you closer, then you don't have to perform anymore. You don't have to prove yourself, you don't have to impress others, you don't have to keep up an image. You can actually just come to him as you are. And this is why the gospel is so powerful, because Jesus didn't come to make you look like a better person. He came to give you a new heart. And the difference is everything, because behavior modification says, act like this. But transformation says, become someone new. Luke 18, Jesus tells a story where 2 men go to the temple to pray. One's a Pharisee, and he stands and prays about himself, saying, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people. He talks about his accomplishments, his discipline, his righteousness. From the outside, he looks like a model believer. The other is a tax collector. He doesn't even lift his eyes. He beats his chest and says, God, be merciful to me. I'm a sinner. There's no performance. There's no image. No pretending. Just honesty. And Jesus says, is this the man? It is this man who went home justified. Because God responds not to performance, but he responds to humility. And here's the invitation. I want to invite you to stop managing your image, but start bringing your real self to God. Because the truth is, God is not asking for a version of you that looks like you put it all together. He's asking for the real you, the one that struggles, the one that doubts, the one that feels tired, the one that doesn't feel like you always get it right. And when you bring the version of yourself to him, that's where the transformation begins. So here's a question. Are you following Jesus? Or are you managing the appearance of following him? Because those are not the same thing. One leads to exhaustion, the other leads to life. One is driven by pressure, the other is driven by grace. And maybe today, the most spiritual thing you can do is to not try harder, but be honest. Because God doesn't meet you in the version of yourself you pretend to be. He meets you in the truth of who you are. And that is where the real faith begins.
지금까지 가스펠라이프 철치의 데니얼 킴 목사였습니다. 성경이나 예수 그리스도에 관해서 더 알기를 원하시는 분은 시카고 기독교 방송 전화 847-583 영원 구원으로 연락 바랍니다.